Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the SheepTree, Secret Life of the SheepTree podcast. I'm Bex, and hello from Bex as well. Right, forget. No, off. Good girl. So, got quite a few things sort of on the go at once. So I'll try and go through it all in some kind of coherent order. Today is, so I'm just looking out the window, the weather's horrible, it's raining and just damp, and I've got lots of jobs to do outside that I'm putting off, so I'm filming the second episode of the Secret Life of the SheepTree podcast instead of being outside. I've got 2 projects on the wheel at the minute. Well, actually, I've got nothing currently on the wheel, but I've got two big batches on the go. That includes this, which is my, Bex off please, thank you. This, which is my 7 steps yarn. This is the same yarn, I've just, the 7 steps, it's a gradient yarn, so it fades from light to dark, and that's what a finished skein looks like. So I've got, sorry about the noises you can hear in the background, Bex is currently playing with a big cardboard tube I gave her. Sorry. Yeah, so I've got 3 bobbins I've done so far, the singles. Each bobbin will make a just over 100 gram skein, and they all need to be chain plied up to the finished skeins. I've got enough of the same fibre blend to do another 2 bobbins, so I should have 5 skeins at the end. So on my Ashford Traditional, I have spun these and I will be chain plying them on there as well. So one of my sort of priorities is to get these plied up, and then wound into skeins and set, and then listed on my Etsy page. The other projects I've got on the go are on my new wheel. Well, I don't know if you can call it wheel. It's a little e-spinner, which is the Electric Eel Nano. Electric Eel Wheel Nano. And this is it's the same actual wool as is like the fleece that's used in this, but it's just blended evenly throughout, so the same colour. The actual wool is this wool, which I've done on the drum carder. I blended it, and then on the final pass through the carder, I've actually removed it using a diz, so I've ended up with a roving. It just makes it, because it's actually a very fine single, it makes it a lot easier to spin because there's less drafting done as I'm spinning. And then that produces this. It's a lace weight. It's a bit difficult when you get down to that weight and you're looking at wraps per inch gauges. They're very clear cut when you've got your double knit, your worsted and your chunkies, and then you drop down to your fingering weight or your 4 plies, and your lace weights, and every guide seems to be different. I will do a bit more research on seeing what various guides are and where they come from, because there's a lot of information on the internet, but there's not a lot of references. And then I will decide what I'll categorise this as, but as you can see, I would be quite happy making a pair of socks out of something this weight. Or a short Bex, quiet, come here, here, there we go. It's fairly fine, very soft yarn. What do you have to say? Come here. Come up. Right, I say it to the camera. No? Right, be quiet then. Yes, so I've got 1 completed skein. 1 completed skein. I've got 2 bobbins full of singles that need plying, and again I'm chain plying these, so this is actually a 3 ply, which is why I think I prefer socks out of it. Why I prefer socks out of it rather than a lacy scarf. Beck's quiet. Because see, with it being a round yarn, it doesn't open up the lace work as much. I mean, it would still work as a lacy scarf. It depends what, you know, if you had a lacy textured scarf, then great. But yeah, so these need chain plying, so that's on my to-do list as well, along with I have enough of that blend batch to again make 5 skeins. So these skeins are just over 50 grams. So I've got, this is just over 25 grams, so I've got 2 of these per bobbin. So I've got enough to make 5, so I've got this one to spin up and another batch which I haven't actually, I need to do the last pass through the drum carder and whip it off with a diz, and then that will be good to go. So I want to get those done, and then that can be listed on my Etsy shop as well. So those are my sort of, if you like, my work projects that need to be done so that you guys can buy it. Excuse me, hang on. Then on the more fun, well, not that that's not fun, but the more fun side of things, Sunday afternoon was pretty dire weather-wise, and whilst waiting for my dinner to cook, I decided to spin up. Bex, pick it up. Pick it up. Sorry, she's found a piece of cardboard that she wants to play with. Yeah, so because obviously having a field full of sheep and a shed full of wool is never enough, occasionally I succumb to online shopping, and I bought this bat from is it Fibre Heart? I can't remember. The Threshing Barn, that's where it was from. There we go. I bought this from the Threshing Barn. It was a butterfly bat, so it was in a big bat, big floofy bat. And it is a blend of merino, it doesn't say what percentages, but merino, bamboo, sari silk, I think, and mohair. Completely not the normal kind of thing I'd spin, because obviously normally I just spin with wool, pure wool. Might be a blend of different breeds, but it's still wool. And very rarely do I spin with merino wool, because there's not many merino flocks in the UK, and I tend to buy British wool or use my own sheep, and merino sheep aren't overly suited to our climate, so it's not a breed that I've ever felt the need to consider keeping, because you know, sheep can be temperamental enough at times trying to keep them alive, so I wouldn't like to introduce a breed to my flock that wouldn't like the, you know, the orchards they graze in, the cold winters. Well, it's not so much cold, I think it's the damp that's the issue there. But yeah, so it's completely out of my normal comfort zone. I spun it on my electric eel, and then I chain plied it, and it's come up with this, which is, I think, about 80 metres. It's about double knit. I haven't actually done the wraps per inch, but I've just sort of guessed on it, so that's where we are. I think I'm probably going to just knit this up to make a little you know, a headband ear warmer type hat. I might do a cable down the middle. I haven't really decided what I'm going to do. It's all a bit, I need to think about it, because I don't want to get partway through, if I'm knitting it lengthways like I would a cable, get nearly to the end and run out of yarn and have to throw it all back and start again. So I might have to do something that's, you know, more straight up and down. but I haven't done a knitting project that's involved a cable knit for quite a while, and I feel like I want to do one. But maybe I'll have to think. Well, actually, no. There's a pattern on Ravelry that I really want to do, but that involves either finding some nice yarn I want to buy, or doing a big sweater spin. So maybe I won't do a cable with this. I'll save my cabling for that jumper. Yeah, so that was Sunday's spin. It's very nice to start a project and finish a project quite quickly. So I might have to have a few more things set aside for when I get a slot of time like that I can do something like that, because that was quite enjoyable. Yeah, so then the next thing I want to talk about is this monster here. I'll try and ping up a few photos. I think I took some as I was doing it, but basically I would say in my stash, I don't really have, well, I certainly don't have a wool stash, because I know that I've got about 2 balls of wool sock yarn somewhere. But the wool I make, I spin and then I use, or I spin and I sell. The yarn, that is. I've got somewhere a box of old acrylic yarn, but I don't like using acrylic because it just dries my hands out. But I do have a collection of sort of craft stuff upstairs, and I found an old pack of it was Wool Warehouse, and it was 200 grams of Shetland roving, British Shetland roving. So I thought, well, I'll spin that up, and I thought, well, I don't often have roving to dye, so I dyed it before I spun it, and I dyed it lots of different colours in the roving, and then decided I was going to fractal spin it, because it's not often, certainly with the natural colours, that it's worth a fractal spin, because you can get quite a similar effect just by doing a rough blend. So what, X? Come here. Yeah. So I dyed it, and then I split it down to do a fractal spin, and I was only doing a 2-ply. So I split the roving in half lengthways, and I spun the one side as was. So I did a short forward draw, spinning across the top to keep the stripes going. And then I split the other one down to 3, which was slightly challenging because it was old and compressed. Not old, excuse me a moment. All right, sorry about that. Right, we're back. I remember where I was. Yeah, so because it'd been in the little seal plastic bag, protect it from moths. It had sort of been compressed down, so splitting it out into 3 even pieces was a bit challenging because it didn't naturally want to split. Anyway, I managed to do it, split it down to 3. I'm not sure they were even pieces. What I forgot to do was weigh them, weigh the 2 halves, and I'd already started spinning the first half. So I was like, we'll just hope that I split it right and that I have an even enough single that we end up with the same length. And so then once I'd spun my 2 bobbins full, which were full because I spun it on the Ashford Traditional, and they hold near enough, just over 100 grams each, and I had 200 grams of roving. I had my 2 bobbins, and then I plied them together. Now, I don't normally do 2 plies, and I remember why, because it just feels like, because you're just doing the same thing forever, it feels like it takes forever. Whereas when I'm doing a chain ply, which is my favourite, you're moving your hands all the time. So I did this, 2-plied it together forever, and produced this ball of yarn, which quite pleasingly, hang on one moment, had a leftover amount, which I then made an Andean plying bracelet, and that, applied it together, so it's not fractal anymore. That was all I had left over. So I was quite pleased with that, and that I managed to split 200 grams, and I just had this tiny, tiny little skein of yarn left over. So yeah, so I had this ball, and then I had to decide what I was going to make with it. So I did a quick wraps per inch sort of check, and we were at a fingering weight of kind, so just above lace weight. And I did a length check, and I can't remember how long it was now. And then I went on a pattern search, and I found, hang on, to check what the name of the pattern is. The Eye Blink shawl from Heidi Alander, which was a free pattern on Ravelry. So I've almost finished. I've got 2 more repeats of the lace and then the edging lace to do. But it's like an eyelet edged shawl with a straight stockinette stitch, and then a repeating lace pattern. So I'm just like 2 or 3 rows into the second repeat. I can't remember off the top of my head. So it's just a case. The problem is now I'm on the lace section. I actually have to set aside time where I can concentrate and have a look at the chart and do the pattern. Once I'm on ongoing with the row, it's fine. It's an easy repeat, but it's not a catch up with your friend whilst you're on the phone and knit kind of pattern, which the rest of it, most of that was done during sort of COVID phone calls, catching up with people on the phone and knitting a big old shawl from Shetland. But I really enjoyed using Shetland to the point that I'm considering, I mean, I've always wanted Shetland sheep. I think they're really pretty, really dainty. They're quite deer-like sheep. And having enjoyed spinning Shetland so much, there is the possibility that I might be adding Shetland to my flock. Yes, so I might acquire some Shetlands. The other interesting development my flock may be making, so it's coming up to sort of the time of year where I need to think about breeding and what I'm going to do next year. My tup, my Rightland, he's a bit of a veteran now in the sense of he's the father of the majority of my flock. I've still got some ewes I can use him on, and I will do this year. Because he'll have a few friends throughout autumn to keep company. But I need to think about the rest of the flock, and because I didn't lamb last year, so I want to lamb this year, and what I will be putting on them. Now, my friend recently bought a Gotland ram, which I think, excuse me 1 minute again. Where was I? Yes, my friend bought a Gotland ram, who has been named Captain Oates. He briefly came to stay at mine because he needed quarantining before introducing to her other ram, and currently she's only got fields, hasn't got any sheds or yard space. So I've got an empty shed and some yard space, which actually borders on to one of the fields that I've got sheep in. So we set him up in my shed, made him a little yard outside space, and then double walled it to the gate that goes into my field so he can actually have contact with my sheep. So he lived there for a week within sight and sound of sheep, but not actually being able to contact them, so that we reduced the risk of any diseases being brought into her flock or my flock. And then after a week, we brought her other ram, who is called Bertram, and he is a Frisian. She bought him because she keeps Dorsets mainly, which are a very milky breed, and she wanted to crossbreed the Frisian with the Dorsets and produce a milking, high yielding milker. that she can milk. She also has goats as well. But the interesting thing was this year, the shearlings, so that's the first shear that were Bertram's offspring, had a beautiful fleece. I spun a sample. I don't know where it is. I'll find it for the next one to show you. A little sample I knit up quite quickly and it's spun really nicely. So actually, as an odd, I wouldn't really expect, is that Bertram seems, I mean, I know they were crossed on Dorsets and not on Rylands, but there seems to be a fleece quality there that's been passed on. So yeah, so we brought Bertram over to see, sorry, I shut Bex in the other room and she's objecting. Brought Bertram over to see Captain Oates, and I'll pop a photo on here. When you introduce rams, they have to be in a very small space so they can't get distance to run up at each other. Hang on, we'll sort this. Yes, so they've got to be introduced in a small space so they can't get the distance to run up at each other, which means creating a small pen. And again, because my friend has only got a field, it would mean creating the pen under a tree to make shelter, and it's not really the best setup. So we brought Bertram to my yard, which he had to spend a week there for movement reasons, and they had a little pen. We started off with a little pen next to each other and there was no aggression in him, but Bertram didn't seem to realise that Captain Oates wasn't a lady. So we did have to start them off with a little dividing wall so that Captain Oates could get some peace. So the photo that I've shown you will be of them in two little pens next to each other. But fairly quickly we could remove the hurdle from them and they were fine. And then the following day, a couple of days, they went out into the field and they've been fine. So yeah, so those are the possibilities of two rams I could use. I'm a bit cautious of using Bertram because he is so big, but I have got some bigger girls that he could go on that aren't actually Ryland. But I will definitely be using Captain Oates. So yes, and if I got any Shetlands, I'd probably buy in ewe lambs and they wouldn't be going to the tub this year. So yes, that's my thoughts on my flock currently. What else has happened? I had a hay delivery. My brother, he's got a bit of land at his house, and he's got a few tractors, and he makes hay. And this year, his shed setup is such that he needs the hay out of the way so he doesn't set fire to it when he's welding. So he's been bringing it down to my buildings, and he brought the second cut down to me, which, considering the dry year we've had, it's very nice stuff. He brought 60 bales or around about that down. So we put that in the shed. That was on a few days ago, I can't remember. And then I've just got to move the last lot of hay he delivered before that out of the shed that I keep the sheep in over winter. Because that hay I will use, so the first cut was, it had all gone to seed, so it's got a lot less feed value for me, so I'll be feeding that first. And then this stuff, which has got a higher feed value because it's was cut at a better time, will be fed when they're closer to lambing or just lambed, is at the back. And then me and my friend, we had got hold of some very small round bales. They've been outside under a tarpaulin just to make sure they wouldn't heat up because we weren't involved in making them. And if hay is at all moist when it's baled, it can heat up and then ultimately catch fire. So we left those outside, away from the buildings, under a tarpaulin. I've been checking on them. I'm happy they're not going to heat up, so those will then go in next because those will be the first thing that's fed. Yeah, so I had a hay delivery. what else? I had my first welding lesson. I've welded a bit before, not terribly successfully. I mean, it's been all right, but not great. So my other half, who he's referred to in my written blog as the useful man, took some time in the workshop to actually go through and explain to me sort of the theory behind welding, how you build up welds. So I had a little bit of a practice using his arc welder, one of them, and yes, I'll pop a little photo here for you to see the awful welds and then the slowly improving welds. On my to-do list, that's been on my to-do list for a while, but I might actually, because it's raining, I might actually complete it because it involves being inside a shed, is to clear the workbench in my workshop shed, so that I've got space to set up my welder, because I've got an arc welder as well, and do some practice on some scrap metal. Once I get going, it's great fun, but sort of, because everything I do sort of produces an end product that's useful, the thought of setting aside a block of time to go and do something that isn't going to produce something that I can use or is necessary or useful, it's hard to do. So I need to tell myself that I am producing something. I'm producing a skill that I will then use to mend sheep hurdles and whatever else needs doing. But given that it's raining and the alternative is probably doing something like picking courgettes in the rain, picking French beans in the rain, I think I might use that time that I would normally spend doing that to sort out the shed. And hopefully in a week or so I'll have some nice welds to show you rather than the welds that resemble bird poo on that picture that I showed you. Yes, I think that's all that I have to add in this little podcast. Yes, and hopefully there will be some progress with both this yarn and these yarns, and I'll get them up on my shop as soon as possible. But yes, thank you for watching, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed what I had to say, and yeah, please share and subscribe to my podcast if you enjoyed it.